I'll let folks trickle in here for just a couple of minutes.
Right. Good evening, everyone who is joining us. We are going to get started in just a minute as we give folks another minute or two to join us this evening. Thank you again for being here, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Bear with us. We let other folks get admitted into our Zoom. All right. Going to give it just maybe another 30 seconds or so before we get started. Looks like we've still got folks trickling in, so we want to give everybody just another few seconds to join us this evening. All right, it looks like we are about 5 minutes after 6, so I think we should go ahead and get started. We only have about an hour this evening, and I want to make sure that we leave as much time as possible for as many questions as we can get through in the limited time that we're going to have. So folks can just continue joining us. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councilwoman Tracy Park. Really, really glad to have so many of you joining us this evening for a very important conversation about housing and density and development in the Westchester community. Very, very pleased to be joined this evening by a number of your CD11 staffers. We are with our district director, Juan Fregoso. My legislative deputy, Sarah Flattery, is on the call. Sean Silva, who many of you already know, who does a lot of planning work, as well as Craig Bullock, your CD11 planning director, and Trey Grogan, your LAX liaison and Westchester field deputy. We are also very glad that we have with us this evening some of our colleagues from the City Planning Department, Theodore Irving, Connie Chav, and Blair Smith. They are going to be on hand to answer questions that you may have this evening about density, development, ED1, community plan updates, and the like. So we appreciate their participation with us this evening. In terms of what we'd like to cover tonight, I have a few slides that we're going to go over. I have a few questions that I would like to kick us off by asking our planning department, and then we are going to open it up to questions and comments from our attendees who have joined us this evening. We're going to give everybody about a minute to ask their question or to offer their comment. We're going to try to keep the comments and questions as brief as possible so that we can take as many and try to give you as many answers this evening as we can. My staff will also be monitoring the chat. I am not looking at it, but my staff is, and they can hopefully chime in and answer as many questions in that platform as they can. If there is anything outstanding at the end of our conversation tonight, we can certainly come back and answer those questions one-on-one or over email or in another session. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. I appreciate you making the time to be here. And I'm really glad that we have an opportunity to come together as a community to talk about these issues. Some of you may remember that I hosted a Westchester town hall about 6 or 8 weeks ago. Wanted to do a check-in with the community in the wake of the Palisades fire. We covered a lot of issues: homelessness, encampments, RVs, the city budget. We also spent a lot of time on planning and land use and development. But I'm really glad that we're going to have this conversation again this evening because we continue to be aware of communications over social media and through WhatsApp chats that seem to express a lot of confusion, a lot of concerns, a lot of questions, and oftentimes some narratives about density and development that I don't think are entirely accurate, including my position as your council member on these issues, or what role or authority I have in guiding these issues. So I just want to open this evening by being very, very clear with all of you. I have very deep, grave concerns about the addition of density in any part of Council District 11 because of concerns about traffic, evacuation routes, and the impacts on our infrastructure, which include everything from parking, sewer lines, electrical grids, impacts on schools, the fire department, the police department, and other essential services and resources. The push to add density in Los Angeles has been underway for many, many years and is something that is a constant topic of discussion in the community. One of the big challenges that we have as a community is that much of the laws related to development and density are coming out of Sacramento. These are laws that are written by people that I didn't vote for. These are laws that I did not write. But once they are enacted by the state of California, we are obligated to comply with them. But when I hear the occasional narratives that somehow the council office is pushing projects in any particular community, or that I am driving density in one area or another, I want to correct the record and make very clear that I am not pushing or driving anything. I do not control the real estate market. I do not control what lots are available for sale. I do not control who purchases those lots. And I do not control what projects are ultimately proposed at those locations. We have seen vast swaths of our West Side communities lost to dense development, and there are some communities in Council District 11 that have been particularly hard hit, where we have seen losses of entire single family home neighborhoods to accommodate stack and pack density. So I want to say again, I don't like that stuff. I didn't vote for the people who write those laws. And I don't like the way that the city of Los Angeles implements density without adequate concurrent investment in the infrastructure that is necessary to support that additional density and strain on our systems and the additional risk that it creates. So I want to spend a little bit of time this evening talking about what some of these laws are and what some of the rules and the challenges are that we're confronting. So why don't we kick off the PowerPoint presentation? Trey is going to help us walk through this tonight. Trey, why don't you take over our screen and fire up our PowerPoint for us? I want to start by asking folks, and you don't actually have to raise your hands, but how many of you in the last month have actually reached out to your state senator or your state assembly member about Senate Bill 79? My guess is probably not very many of you, but I want to give you an example of the kind of housing laws that we're seeing coming out of Sacramento. Senate Bill 79 just made its way this week through the state Senate, and this is going to require cities to allow taller, denser building near public transit. It will allow buildings up to 7 stories within a quarter mile of transit stops. And those major transit stops, and those are typically your metro stations and frequent bus routes. And it will also allow up to 4 stories within a half a mile. Let's move over to the next slide. I want to show you on a map where these major transit stops are to give you a sense of where these kinds of projects under SB 79 would be permitted. So this gives you an idea of some of those major transit corridors where we have a stop that would be within the range to allow a project to qualify as SB 79. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this has already made its way through the Senate, and it is going to head to the State Assembly for a final vote. So if this is the kind of law that causes you concern and raises legitimate questions for you about how that type of density may impact the character of your neighborhood, and especially in Westchester, where we have some very wonderful neighborhoods, but we also have the impacts of the airport as well as increased and enhanced transit in and around the area. These are the 2 assembly members for this area. I highly, highly recommend that you contact them as well as the governor to let them know directly what your thoughts and concerns about this proposed law may include. Next slide, please. Over the last decade, more than 200 housing bills out of the state legislature have essentially eliminated local control over housing development, particularly affordable housing. So, for example, and I just grabbed 4 examples here, but there are literally 200 of these to choose from. Back in 2022, AB 2097 prohibited cities from implementing minimum parking requirements on affordable housing projects within a half mile of public transit. AB 2345 prohibits the city from establishing parking minimums when the project is near a transit stop. And we have seen the definition of transit stop increase drastically over the years. SB 4, as of last year, allows churches and schools to use their property to do denser, taller projects without parking, and those projects are deemed by right. And AB 1287 allows developers to stack double density on top of the maximum number of units already allowed. These are just a handful of state laws that have effectively taken away decisions about height, number of units, setbacks, and minimum parking away from your local city government officials. Many of these projects are not things that come to the city council. They are not things that I have a vote on. We do our best to engage with developers and try to work to achieve as many community benefits as we can when we are talking about these projects. But these have now been authorized by the state as part of the effort to address what has been described as a widespread housing crisis. For those of you who do not know, we have a mandate from the state of Los Angeles to zone 4 and allow for the building of up to 450,000 units of new housing in Los Angeles. Now, I know many of you have a lot of concerns about the basis for those RHNA numbers. I don't disagree with you. I think it is a head scratcher that we have a mandate to build 500,000 new housing units when we lost so many people out of the city of Los Angeles in our last census count that we actually lost a congressional seat. But again, I am not a state legislator. I did not create this mandate. And whether we agree with it or not, these are the laws that the men and women who were elected by citizens of California to serve in the state legislature are imposing on us at a local level. I have never been of the opinion that bureaucrats in Sacramento who have probably never visited your neighborhood should not be making decisions about density and development that impacts the character of our neighborhoods. I believe that you and we are the subject matter experts, and I think that we should have a lot more discretion over what ultimately is built and a bigger say in the designing the future of our neighborhoods. But effectively, that discretion has been taken away from the city council and your local government officials because of these state laws. Next slide, Trey. So I want to move to ED1 because ED1 is a subject that I have seen discussed in various social media posts and WhatsApp chats. And I want to be very clear what ED1 is, where it comes from, and what it does. Your city council is the legislative branch of your local government. We make local laws through a committee process that ultimately get voted on by the city council. The mayor is the executive director of the city of Los Angeles, and the mayor has the authority to issue executive directives. Those executive directives can create sweeping policies with the force of law behind them. But those are policies created by the mayor and her team. They are not created by CD11. And this, for example, ED1 is not something that comes to the city council, not something that I have had a vote on. That is a policy that comes from the mayor's office. What ED1 does is essentially take 100% affordable housing projects, those subject to some of the rules that I just shared with you, and essentially bypasses the usual permitting and planning process and allows those projects to be filed directly with the Department of Building and Safety for approval within 60 days. ED1 projects do not go to committees. They do not come to the city council. And I, your council member, Tracy Park, do not have a vote on them. So ED1 projects are things subject to our state density bonus laws that allow for the elimination of parking requirements, that allow available height increases, that have setback reductions, and higher floor area ratios. Some of the things that I know many of you are concerned about and typically find challenging with developments in the area. Next slide, please. I do want to talk a little bit, though, about what affordable housing is. I have heard some people characterize affordable housing as homeless high-rises, and I want to be very clear. Affordable housing is not homeless housing. It's not permanent supportive housing. Affordable housing is housing that is restricted to people who earn within certain limits. The vast majority of affordable housing projects set a limit for people living in them to earn 80% of the area median income. Here on the west side, the area median income is about $80,000 a year. These are people who are working in everyday jobs. These are the receptionist at your dentist office. These are the people working in your grocery stores, at your schools, in your doctor's office. The average annual salary for an LA Unified teacher is $73,152. Affordable housing, by definition, is workforce housing. It is for people to have an opportunity to be able to afford rent in a place that is otherwise sky high. And so the concept of affordable housing and creating places for people to live who are working, who otherwise would be entirely priced out of the marketplace, is something that is actually an important goal. Young people who are starting off their careers, people that are saving to buy a home, people that are priced out of other markets need to be able to access housing at affordable rates. And that's what an affordable housing project is. That is very, very different than homeless housing, than homeless shelters, interim housing beds. And it's even different than permanent supportive housing, which sometimes gets blended with affordable housing. But these ED1 projects are 100% affordable and workforce housing. Most of what we see on the west side with our affordable housing, typically it's a blend of market rate and affordable. Pretty often it's paired with commercial or retail on the ground floors. So I want to take a look at how ED1 is spread across the city. So Trey, let's look at the next slide, please. I have heard through community feedback concerns about ED1 not being fairly distributed across the city or in certain places. I want to be very, very clear that, again, I don't control market conditions. I don't control what lots are available or who buys them. But in CD11, we are about the middle of the pack citywide. Here in CD11, we have 1,907 proposed units. Those are primarily spread over, the council district. We have 1,037 that have actually been approved. So just by comparison, in Council District 1, 3,741 proposed units. Council District 10, 3,208. Council District 13, 5,211. Just next door on the other side of the 405 freeway in Council District 5, we have 2,464 proposed units. Over in CD8, 4,807, and in CD9, 3,328. Again, that is compared to the 1,907 units that are proposed in CD11. Next slide, please. Our office in CD11, like many of you, were very, very concerned when ED1 was first revealed. And I will tell you why. All of the purple that you see on the slide in front of you are single-family home neighborhoods in CD11. When ED1 was first introduced, all of those single-family homes, those neighborhoods that you see, were potentially subject to this densification, to these projects that qualify for all of these density bonuses, the height enhancements, and the relaxed parking requirements. Because of the advocacy work that we and others have done based primarily on feedback that has come from our residents, have lobbied very hard to have revisions implemented by the mayor and her team to ED1. So, among some of the changes that have been made since ED1 was first introduced, is that projects that would fall into the very high fire severity zones or in the coastal zone have been exempted. I, your council member for CD11, do not determine what is the coastal zone and what is the high fire severity zone. All of that is determined by state law. Some of you probably saw recently that CAL FIRE updated the very high fire severity zone maps here in Los Angeles, and we now have about 16,000 new acres across the city that have been added to that list. I also want to note, and this is extremely important, all of our R1 single family home areas have now been excluded from ED1 developments. And this also relates to the strategies that we have used as a council office to help respectfully and responsibly implement these new density laws. And whether I like them or agree with them personally or not, and let me be clear, I don't. We are trying as a council office very hard to preserve the character of your single family neighborhoods. And to the extent that we have to implement these plans and these laws, to try through our community plan update process to allocate density along commercial corridors and in our commercial areas. And while we still have concerns about impacts on traffic and infrastructure and our resources in those areas, it has been a huge effort to protect those R1 zones. My office has done about 75 meetings with the Westchester community, stakeholders, and groups from all different views and opinions about where and how to allocate new housing and density in Westchester. We have communicated all of that feedback through a series of communications to our planning department, who are on this call with us this evening. And they have been extraordinarily responsive and helpful in updating those community plan maps to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to protect our R1 single family neighborhoods in CD11 and in particular in Westchester. Trey, I don't know if this is the slide that has the link to the ED1 projects. If we already passed it, can we go back? I'd like you to pull that map up, please.
Yep, 1 second.
I'm not sure if it's back a slide or forward a slide.
I just need to switch over my screen share. 1 sec.
It was back on the page. Oh, there we go. So I want everybody to see this. Here is the city of Los Angeles. Those blue pin marks represent ED1 projects. Trey, can you zoom in a little bit so we can focus just on CD11? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, CD11 is everything west of the 405 freeway from the airport all the way up to Pacific Palisades and Brentwood. So what you see here, let's take a look up here in West LA Sawtell. You can see there we have 6 ED1 projects proposed in West LA Sawtell. As I mentioned at the top of the presentation, that is a part of CD11 that has actually taken the brunt of density and development over the last couple of decades. If you've been there recently and you've seen it, there are taller, denser apartment buildings Pretty much everywhere you go, it has been the primary area that developers have focused on, in large part because the land there has been more affordable than in other parts of the West Side. As these new state laws have allowed for the addition of height and density along commercial corridors, there are certain parts of the West Side, just because of geography, that are going to be of more interest to developers than others. And those are our communities that have major transit corridors in them. Delray, Mar Vista, East Venice, and Westchester are the areas in the mid and southern part of our district where we are most likely going to see ED1 style proposals come in. Why? Because that's where our transit corridors are. Developing in Playa del Rey and west of Lincoln in Venice has an entire additional set of challenges because of the Coastal Commission and the coastal zone, which, as I said earlier, is exempt from ED1. Now, here in Westchester, you have 4 ED1 projects. Two of them are right across the street from each other. It is the same owner. Trey, I'm going to have you zoom in on that a little bit. This project is, like I said, these lots are owned by the same individual. This is actually a pretty large project. This one is 2 buildings. That is going to be about 800 units if it's built. That is a very large project. As you can see, it is in a commercial zone, on a commercial corridor, not in the heart of your residential neighborhoods. Now, you have 2 more much smaller ED1 projects over here. Trey, this is one at Manchester and Ramsgate, and the other one is where?
On Reading.
On Reading, and those are about 50 or 60 units. Now, I have heard, again, this is the kind of thing that sometimes we see in social media and in these WhatsApp groups, that Westchester is somehow being targeted for development, or that it is somehow taking an unfair share brunt of density and development. The vast majority of your units are coming from that project. It's shown as 2, but it's 2 buildings across the street from each other, 1 project. But there are other very, very large projects elsewhere in the district as well. At Bundy and Expo, we have 485 units. In Venice, and this is actually in the coastal zone, so they're not going to get the ED1 expedited process. But at the metro site, we are getting about 450 units on Main Street. At the West LA Commons in Sawtell, 926 units. And then at Santa Monica and Barrington, we have another very big one that's about 386 units. So yes, there is a very large one that has been proposed there in downtown in Westchester. I have concerns about the size and the scale. I obviously have very serious concerns about the traffic and the parking, especially when that is compounded by the challenges that you already face with traffic related to the airport. But I want to be very, very clear. This council office does not push developers here or there. We don't have a say in who buys what lots or where. We, CD11, are not concentrating development in any one place or another. What we are trying to do is work very closely with our neighborhoods and our communities through our community plan updates to put as many guardrails as we can to protect your neighborhoods by keeping these kinds of projects as best we can in the commercial areas and along our commercial corridors. So I want to be very, very clear that when you hear those narratives that somehow we're pushing this or we're targeting Westchester, that's just not the case at all. Trey, let's move on to the next slide, our final one. So here is a list of requests that have been conveyed to me and my team from the Westchester community as it relates to ED1 and development. We have these requests. We have conveyed these already to the mayor and her team. We have the planning department right here on the call tonight. They are aware of these as well. And as we continue the work to finish our community plan updates, which may be more challenging because of recent budget cuts and anticipated layoffs in the planning department, which are unfortunate. Personally, we have put a lot of work into our community plan updates, and I am going to insist that we find a way to get them finished. But in part, it's important for you to have those in place so that we have a governing document that gives us what limited ability we have to try to allocate these projects in a way that is protecting and preserving your R1 zones. So here are your requests. Planning is here to receive them tonight. We will also convey these requests in our official capacity as we continue our advocacy around your community plan updates. So I wanted to give you all of that as an overview to set the table for our discussion, to hopefully clear up some of these false narratives that keep popping up in the WhatsApp groups and on social media. But now I'd like to turn it over to a couple of questions with our planning department and then open it up to questions from our community. So, to our friends from the planning department, I am going to put you on the spot and ask you to come on camera and unmute for these, because I would like to have your professional expertise baked into these answers so that everyone understands what we are talking about. So, planning, can you please explain what our state density bonus law is? What does it mean, and how does it impact development in Los Angeles?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Councilwoman. This is Connie Chow. I'm a senior city planner with the planning department. So just to clarify, a lot of the discussion here today was about ED1. I just want to clarify the difference between ED1 and state density bonus. So ED1 is, as you mentioned, a streamlining tool that expedites the processing of 100% affordable housing projects. That means review of objective standards only, no site plan review, no hearing, no environmental review, no appeals, and they must be completed within 60 days. So that's ED1. The majority of the ED1 projects that we're seeing are using state density bonus law. And this is established by the state and offers certain development incentives for housing development. So as a high-level overview, the state law requires that the city grant a density bonus, incentives, and waivers in parking if certain affordability requirements are met. So in exchange for meeting the minimum affordable set-aside requirements, a project may receive a set of incentives and waivers to deviate from those development standards so that they may expand the building envelope so that additional affordable units can be constructed. They can provide for design efficiencies and allow the overall space dedicated to residential uses to be increased. So just wanted to set the stage on the difference between ED1 and state density bonus law.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, and thank you for explaining the density bonus laws. Many of our residents and me as a resident and as the council member are concerned about the loss of local discretion. I remember when SB 9 was passed, there were challenges, legal challenges in court around it. But can you explain to us this evening how ED1 impacts the role of the council offices, the neighborhood councils, and our local planning commissions when it comes to projects that are submitted under ED1?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, ED1 states that no public hearings can be required. There's no opportunities for subjective review. There's no appeal process. So, with that, interested parties are still able to provide comments for certain projects on the record. We still encourage stakeholders to reach out to the council office, neighborhood council, and the applicant. But ultimately, as the city planning department, who's, we're required by the state to review these density bonus projects, we're not able to conduct a hearing or apply subjective standards under ED1 for these projects.
Okay, so thank you for that. And community members, I hope you heard and understand the process there. These are projects that are not required to go through the same kind of public hearing processes that many of you became used to seeing in the past. So just one more time for our residents that want to be engaged, that want to offer input and feedback on these projects. If there's no public hearings, where and how is the best way for residents to engage around them?
I think you put it well at the start of the meeting. Because state density bonus law originates at the state level, we do recommend stakeholders reach out to their state representatives to make their concerns known. ED1 is a streamlining tool at the mayor's level, but the density bonus law is coming from the state. And that's what established unlimited density bonus, zero parking requirements. Projects can get up to a 33-foot height increase, and up to 5 incentives and a waiver under existing density bonus law. So that's where a lot of the larger projects are coming from.
All right. So one final question before we open it up to the community. What is the city's plan to monitor long-term impacts of ED1? So especially concerning, does it actually get us where we need to be with affordability? What are the impacts on infrastructure? Is there going to be a course for correction if it turns out that these projects are causing more negative impacts in our communities? Is there any way to get off the train?
Connie, I might be able to chime in. I think, I don't know if you can see me just yet, but I think in regards to ED1, that is a regulation and tool of the mayor's office. So, they are reviewing ED1 and tracking its projects and entitlements. They have a multi-departmental working group that analyzes project impacts as they go through the pipeline. I think many of you are familiar that we've recently, adopted a compliant housing element. Our next one is right around the corner, which feels very soon to us all. As part of that housing element update, we do look at things like our affordability needs, our housing trends, our production trends. So we will be looking at housing overall from the planning department lens at that time.
Okay, so I want to say this to our residents who are in the Zoom this evening. You are always welcome to reach out to my office to share your concerns and your thoughts. I want you to know that when you do that, we take all of that feedback very seriously. When new projects are introduced, whether they are ever going to come to me for a vote or not, we try very hard to work with builders and developers to extract as many community benefits and givebacks as we can. Sometimes those may come in the form of an extra traffic light or a crosswalk or open space. Sometimes we are successful in getting them to add some parking. Some developers are more willing than others to work with us to try to build in a way that is respectful of existing communities. Other developers aren't. And when they are permitted to do things by right, my hands as your council member, my ability to intervene, my ability to say no is virtually non-existent. And it doesn't mean that we don't care. It doesn't mean that we don't try. It doesn't mean that we are ignoring community concerns. We hear you loud and clear about your concerns. I share your concerns. I see all over the West Side the challenges that we are already having with traffic and impacts on our infrastructure. We have all, as a council district, just gotten through the worst disaster in our city's history. And it's a miracle no one died during the evacuation. And all of those circumstances are a product of rampant development without concurrent investment in our infrastructure. And what happened in the Pacific Palisades, if that fire had started in any other neighborhood in CD11 or anywhere else in the city, the outcome likely would have been the same. So these are very serious issues. And we, as a council office, did not spend the last 2 years doing 75 meetings to elicit this feedback and to put the guardrails in place that we have successfully done to protect and preserve your R1 zones. The hard reality here is that a lot of this density is coming, and there is currently little or nothing that we can do about much of it. I am very grateful that planning is here tonight to hear directly from you. They certainly know what my concerns are, and I am always going to continue to shuttle these issues to the mayor and her team. And I will certainly continue to lobby and advocate that these types of proposals like we have on the screen in front of us are taken into consideration for future revisions to ED1. So I am going to stop talking for a few minutes. Trey, why don't we open it up to questions and comments from our participants? And let's see how many questions we can get through in the next few minutes.
Thank you. Yes, I know that we have kind of a hard stop at 7. So for folks who have any questions that they'd like to answer live, please raise your hand. And right now I see Tracy Thrower-Conyers. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for calling on me. I've been following the density antics from Sacramento since 2017, which is already 8 years ago. And I can attest to everything Tracy said about these housing bills getting crazier and crazier with each passing year. No local control means Tracy's hands are tied, period. And I know people want to focus on ED1 tonight, and I'm just as concerned about ED1. But SB 79 is extra time sensitive right now because we have about a minute left to fight it at the Sacramento level. I'm working closely with 2 statewide groups, and we've got one last push in the coming days. Email me at tracyconyers@gmail.com for more information on how you can help. It really matters. The bill is hurting, and we have a chance to stop it, and that would be phenomenal.
Tracy, thank you for your continued focus and leadership on these issues. You have just been great educating the community and encouraging that engagement. Like I said before, we are always happy to receive that feedback and we share it out to the relevant parties. But a lot of times, we elect assembly members and state senators, and then we send them up to Sacramento and we never see them or hear from them again. And, a lot of times, because I'm the most local and the most accessible of our officials, a lot of the anger and the pushback comes directly to me and to the council office when, frankly, SB 79 is something that we all need to be really worried about. I need all of you to send an email to your state assembly members, and you should probably send it to the governor, because I think this is going to be a yes in the assembly. And the governor will probably sign it. We've got to escalate the lobbying and the asks up to the correct officials and the people who are actually writing and signing these laws. So Tracy, thank you for your continued partnership and your advocacy on these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. And next, can we go to Zoom user? I'm not sure who it is, but I'm gonna allow you to talk.
Yes, hi, my name's William Manahan, and thank you for having this. I'm a Westchester resident. What my concern is on the ED1, I'm estimating from what you said, 900 spaces. And with that housing, that most likely is going to be 900 additional cars without parking spaces. And some of these places will have more than one car, and our local areas will be parked up because of this. So my question is, the structure, what can we do to protect the local residents in the R1 area so that they will have places to park in front of their houses? Because what's happening, I'm getting a lot of calls where people have put trash cans or cones out and people are fighting, scratching people's cars. And how do we help ourselves? So can we get like a guaranteed preferential parking district within maybe 5 blocks of these developments? And what about the sewer systems and the other utilities? Because they're already near capacity and they're doing everything they can to clear the blockages constantly in the sewer systems.
Yeah, great. There's a lot to unpack in that question, and those are all very valid concerns and issues. So, Trey, Craig, on this particular project, can you give us the lay of the land? Tell us a little bit more about where is it no parking? Are there any spots at all included with it? Or do we even know yet?
I don't know yet based on the project description, but we can certainly find that out and get back to folks. I believe there is parking though included in this project.
There may be some parking.
Yeah, it's certainly not
Almost certainly
one-to-one.
isn't going to be 900 spaces.
It
though.
is not. It might be a
Yeah.
third of that.
Yeah, probably a third of it. And the theory that these lawmakers in Sacramento latch onto is that if the housing development is near transit, supposedly people are going to give up their cars and not have one and not park in your neighborhood, and they're going to ride the metro. And if you've followed along with me or paid attention to me over these last 2.5 years, you know I don't probably believe that to be true. And we have other major issues on metro as well. I am not convinced that people are giving up cars to ride the bus or ride a bike to downtown Los Angeles. And I can tell you because in other parts of the community where we have lost a lot of single family homes to the density, like West LA, the parking is an absolute nightmare over there. So that is one of the kinds of things that we try to push for. Craig, Trey, we have talked about the PPDs as a potential strategy. We have not been very successful with it on the occasions where we have tried it as an intervention. I think it is worth continuing to have that discussion, but are there any thoughts or strategies or ideas that we may have, whether it's a PPD or something else, that could potentially help alleviate parking impacts in the neighboring communities?
So
Because this isn't right on an R1, right? There's a street right next to it. That's all apartment buildings. And then your R1 is, I don't have the map in front of me, but it's tucked over there a ways.
So there are certainly a couple of things that we can do. What you are alluding to, Councilwoman, is that the PPD process is long, it is arduous. Most of the steps lie within the Department of Transportation. The only role that we really play is helping with the initial letter of support and then facilitating an engagement between you and the department to kind of go through those steps. I have been working through that with a couple of different folks. I'm happy to talk to you about it as well if you want to reach out. And then there are some other parking restriction capabilities in the area. I know we are exploring potential meters in downtown as well because it's in a parking meter zone. If it's businesses, but if you're concerned about your residents specifically, I would say reach out to us and we can kind of talk through what the steps of that process will look like.
Yeah, let's do that. So do reach out because I can, even though we have tried this angle and not been successful with it in the past, on the PPDs, I like that tool and that strategy. I think it is a reasonable ask. And I don't like to take no for an answer. So that is something that we are more than happy to keep pushing on. I think that is a valid concern and a reasonable suggestion.
Wonderful. Just because we are running out of time and I want to get through these last couple of hands, I'm going to pass it to Greg.
Yes, hi. So I'll be as brief as I can here. So these size density increases, I'd like to know the logic as to where they came from. You said 7 stories. What was the logic? What was the reasoning? Or did they just say, I want this? I mean, there should be a reason for this. And carrying on the back of the other speaker here, I have the same concerns about electricity, water, sewer systems, all the services. We are strained as it is. We got to figure out, can we handle it? Last summer, remember the governor's proposing all these electric vehicles, but then the next week he says, oh, stop charging the electric vehicles. The grid can't handle it. We're not thinking forward in a logical sense. We're throwing things out that are unreasonable. Let's face it. And now we live in a democracy, I guess, but this ED1 doesn't sound like it. You have no say. This will happen. You have no ability to influence or change it. Sounds a little bit more like fascism, okay? So it sounds like we need to have a change in leadership, what it comes down to. And during the next election cycle, and we got to reverse this if it does go through.
Well, I hear you loud and clear. And as I said, a lot of this stuff I do not agree with, and I do not appreciate bureaucrats in Sacramento who have never walked around any Westchester neighborhood dictating to our communities what is right for us and what isn't. I will defer to Craig, and if our planning department colleagues want to chime in on what the policy justification is for the added height and density and eliminating the parking minimums. I know in part the theory is we don't have to have parking because people who live near transit are going to take transit. I don't believe that. I don't buy it. I don't think the vast majority of folks do. And real experience in life tells us that in neighborhoods where a lot of these projects coexist, the parking challenges continue. So team, colleagues, thoughts on those issues as well as the bigger issue. And I've been asking this for years. Where is our infrastructure plan? Where are the anticipated upgrades to our power and sewer and other essential infrastructure that's going to be needed to support this?
So this is Theodore Irving. I'm principal city planner, and so my other colleagues that left off, they had a hard stop at 11. I mean at 7, so they had to jump off, and so I'm pinch hitting for them. But the question with regards to the height and what rationale was used to determine it, we really don't know. We've just been giving these regulations from Sacramento to work with. We weren't given any particular rationale behind it, other than it's a measure that has to be taken to address the housing crisis. So when you look at some of the narratives behind some of these Senate bills, that's all you get. When I look at some of the discussions that lead up to these bills, everybody seems to be repeating the same thing, that these measures have to be taken to address the housing crisis. There's no particular rationale for any particular measure that they're proposing.
Yeah. So again, like we said at the top of this discussion, this is a persistent narrative that has driven policies now in California for years, and that is that we have a housing crisis and a mandate to upzone and allow for the additions of these units. The number of these bills, including SB 79, which we are most concerned about at the moment, are authored by Senator Scott Wiener out of San Francisco. He is the state senator who has pushed the vast majority of this. And I agree with you. You need to vet your candidates. You need to know who you're voting for. You should get to know them and ask them what their policies are around density and development. The state mandates that we allow this, but they're not writing us a check to upgrade the sewer lines to go with it.
And Councilmember, if I may, and I do want to applaud you for your discussion on this whole matter. I've talked individually with some of your constituents about reaching out to the state representatives, and so I'm so glad to hear that you're sharing the same thoughts on it, because there's very little that we can do as practitioners of planning. We just have to implement these regulations. But essentially, yeah, these elected officials have to be made aware of the implications of these decisions, and unless someone's talked to them directly, they're absent from these discussions. And so, yeah, I hope the constituents do just as you've instructed them to do, and because that's going to make a difference in our minds.
Well, and thank you, Theodore. And it's frustrating for me because people yell at us and accuse us of doing it or writing the laws, and our hands are unfortunately tied in a lot of ways. As you said, you as the planning department, you're there to implement what the law is. Me as the council member, I am here to advocate and to be loud and to do what I can. And I certainly have these conversations when I interact with other elected officials at the state level, when I have been to Sacramento on trips. My concerns about these issues are always at the top of the agenda. But for you guys as a community, you have a say. You get to say yes or no to the candidates who are running, and I highly, highly suggest that you vet them and you know what their positions on these issues are well in advance. Trey, I know we're over time and I know we have another meeting to get to, but I would really like to spend some more time in this one. So maybe we can let folks at our other meeting know I am running a few minutes late, and let's take a few more questions.
Okay, we can make that happen. Next on our list is Paula. Please ask your question or unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Councilwoman Parks. I just wanted to say thank you for hearing the community. Thank you for being an advocate for our community. We really hope that our community impact statement requests can be heard and there can be something carved out for our community. My one question is the ED directives coming from the mayor. My understanding is they're voted on maybe like every 60 days or periodically by the neighborhood council or by the city council to keep her executive powers in order. Is that true? And is there anything that we can do to advocate to stop her emergency powers?
So yes, Paula, thank you for the question. It's a good one. Yes, the mayor can issue executive directives at any time, whether there's an emergency or not an emergency. Now, ED1 was issued pursuant to the declaration of emergency on homelessness. I see homelessness and the interventions necessary to solve homelessness very different than I see the need to produce workforce housing for people who are working, steadily employed, who just need a place to live because, frankly, the rent is too damn high. I can't even afford to live in CD11. I don't even know how I'm managing to do it. So I appreciate that. Lost my train of thought on it. Just Paula, thank you for the just honestly for the continued engagement around it. We do have your community input. We will convey this again to the mayor's team. We have the executive director. I know what I was going to say now. The ED1. There was a motion introduced to make ED1 permanent city policy. That has not moved through the committee. I don't know if it will. I am not the only council member that has questions and concerns about it. If and when I hear that that is going to be scheduled and heard in committee, you can trust I will let you all know that, because if this is something that is going to become a city ordinance through the legislative process, then there will be hearings on it and community input. And that will be our time as a community to legislate around ED1. But that has not moved as of this time. So stay tuned for that. And thank you for asking the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Councilwoman. We are going to move on to Eileen Hiss. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you so much, Councilperson, for having this meeting. First and foremost, I'd like to call out and challenge my fellow residents to give Tina McKinnor and also Assemblyperson Smallwood Cuevas a call and ask about their positions, because recently there was an SB 79 vote and it was not in our favor to stop what's happening. We have to start calling real people out for this particular issue. I know that's my council, an assembly person, and I am really deeply committed to stopping what's been occurring, because SB 79 will override every single thing that we have put guardrails on. It will override because it's a state mandate. It was published and pushed forward with erroneous data. What Scott Wiener did in San Francisco is based on erroneous data. Not in Canada, not in Washington, no place in the United States has density produced a moratorium on high rents. It's never happened. More housing does not equal lower housing. There's been multiple studies. So when you encounter that by reaching out to these council people, call them out on it and ask them to produce the data, because there is none. Again, thank you so much. My real question is, SB 79, is it true that will overrun all of the guardrails that we have set in place now with our density initiatives?
Yes. Yes. This is urgent. Guys, this is actually an emergency. And I know we're here talking about it tonight with CD 11, but we need to be barking up the assembly members' trees and getting to the governor. This is not a CD 11 issue. This isn't I don't have a vote on it. I didn't write the law. I don't work in Sacramento. But yes, yes, it will.
Well,
So contact your state legislators and let the governor know that we don't want this. I don't, the number of laws and what has been allowed. I mean, I don't know how much bigger they can make it. They've gone already so far. It just is insane to me that this train keeps coming. And it is especially annoying to me that it is some senator from San Francisco who has never walked around Westchester or Playa del Rey or Venice or West LA. It's infuriating to me, frankly. So we've got to get the community activated and put that attention in the places where it's going to move the needle. You guys already have me. I'm on your side. I'm already advocating for the things here that you want to see. So let's try to get organized as a community and put this energy and this advocacy in the places where it might make a difference. And that's going to be up at the state level right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Councilwoman. Next on the list is Corey Burkett.
Hi, Councilwoman Park and team. Thank you so much for doing this Zoom tonight. And thank you for your continued advocacy for our community with the community plan update and for submitting our community impact statement requests related to ED1. I think that one of the concerns that I have and other community members related to 8819 and 8820, those ED1 projects, are that they're located in an environmentally sensitive area due to the impacts of the airport. And having people housed in that area just doesn't seem like the most intelligent plan long-term in terms of the noise contour impacts and the environmental emissions from aircrafts. And so is there a precedent anywhere with ED1 projects in environmentally sensitive areas and pushing back on them related to those concerns?
I don't know. Let me defer to Craig and the planning staff to see if there is another example of an ED1 where that challenge has been raised. And I hear you. The airport does have its own unique health and environmental issues and impacts. Those projects at Ramsgate, and I don't have the map up in front of me, it was Reading, right, is the other one. There's already housing there. It is zoned for housing. There's a lot of apartments over in that area. So I hear you. I just am not sure how you make the argument that it's unsafe for some people, but okay for the ones who are already there. I don't know. I'm not sure how to noodle around that.
With regards to processing, environmentally sensitive areas, those are the projects are not eligible for ED1 processing. So it may be eligible for density bonus, but if it's an environmentally sensitive area, it's not eligible for ED1 process. That particular project was submitted years ago, and they're revising the project. So I think it came in ahead of ED. I take that back. It came in after the first ED1 came out.
Yeah.
And so
and I don't know. I mean, typically when we are using the phrase environmentally sensitive habitat area, that is a legal definition, typically involves coastal and wetlands and mountains and watersheds and things like that. Trey, Craig, do you know, does that neighborhood have an official ESHA designation on it? I don't think it does.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not.
Yeah, so I don't think you're going to get an ESHA exemption on that basis for that project.
Right.
But Theodore, and I just want to dovetail back to this again because a couple of people have mentioned it, but I want to say it one more time just so folks hear it and understand it. ED1 is just a process.
That's all it's about.
That's all it is a process. It's not substantive. All it means is that it's going to go to DBS and it gets approved within 60 days.
Yes.
Even if it wasn't in the ED1 process, that very same project could still be proposed, go through planning, have hearings, and get built. I also want to just throw this out there. Projects get introduced and proposed all the time. They don't always get built. And that new proposal, the one that's going to be about 900 units in Westchester, that one I am really worried about just for scale and density. That one is the one I am really the most concerned about because of the traffic and other infrastructure impacts. But that same project, whether it goes through ED1 or not, is the kind of thing that because of state laws and state density bonuses and all that garbage bills that I put up on the slide earlier, it allows for it. It will take them longer to get through the process to do it, but that stuff's all now by right under state law. So let's keep that conversation going about the ESHA and the issues around the airport. We can keep noodling on some other thoughts and strategies for that particular community too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Theodore, and thank you, Councilwoman, of course.
Yep.
And Nico, you'll be next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Nico, we can hear you.
Hi. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Councilwoman Park, for putting on this meeting. I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record right now because I'm going to repeat some things that people have said, but I want to make clear that the vote for SB 79 in the Senate was on Tuesday night, and it just barely passed. In fact, it didn't pass at first. They only got 19 votes out of 21 needed. And then Scott Wiener had them hold the roll open and then went and rounded up 2 more people to vote for it. It almost failed on Tuesday night. This is a beatable bill in the Assembly, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a slam dunk that it's going to make it through the Assembly, but I encourage everybody on this meeting to not only contact Assemblywoman McKinnon and Assemblymember Bryant, but also reach out to Jackie Irwin, who's Assembly member up in the Palisades and Brentwood area. And I actually put in the questions chat a list of all 80 Assembly members.
Yes.
You can reach out to all of them.
Yes.
And I encourage
They all have a
everybody to
vote.
do so.
Yes, Nico, thank you. They all have a vote. I just picked the 2 that were local down here for Westchester, but they all have a vote.
And I encourage everybody to brush up on the issues a little bit around SB 79 and what the issues are. and then contact them respectfully, and tell them how this is going to impact your community, how it's going to impact Venice. The Palisades is a good argument against SB 79 because it's going to be devastating to any areas that are post fire. So there's a lot of good arguments against this bill. So please, everybody, do the work, put in work, and contact people. I would have voted no for this bill, had I been in the Senate. So thank you so much for your time.
We have elections coming up, and I'm going to just come out and say it. Everybody needs to vet. And I know we pay a lot of attention to our city council members, but I don't know that we pay as much attention to who we're voting for when it's our state assembly members and our senators, because they leave. They go to Sacramento and we never see them again. They don't come back and talk to us. They don't put on town halls to talk about SB 79. I'm here doing it as your council member, but again, to echo Nico, I am urging all of you, we've got to channel this to the right place because you already have me. I'm your ally in this. We've got to take this fight to Sacramento. So thank you for that. And we do have an election coming up. And for those of you who may or may not know, Nico is running for a state Senate seat and could be a very important, favorable vote to those of us living here in Council District 11 and beyond. So thank you for that, Nico.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nico. And then last but not least, we have Kate Bonney.
All right, our last question for the night. Kate, bring us home.
All right. Hi, thank you. I saw a bunch of questions in the chat, and I just wanted to ask a follow-up in regard to ED1. Understanding that the builds are mandated and that you guys have no control, obviously, on what proposals are made for what areas. Is there any point in the process where, in the approval process for these projects, where the team looks at if any area within a certain district is bearing an unfair burden? Because I think we understand it needs to be built, and we understand you can't control where it's being proposed, but at some point, if Sawtelle is taking on 90 or 900 units, and Westchester is, and there's certain areas within our district that aren't taking on any, it seems like there needs to be more of a process in place to protect just being fair.
Yeah, Kate, I hear you. So right now we don't have a formal program that says, Westchester gets 4, that means Venice gets 4, that means Mar Vista gets 4, that means Brentwood gets 4. No, that doesn't exist. That is obviously one of the things that has been proposed by Westchester. It's one of the things we've conveyed to the mayor. Planning is here. They've heard it tonight. We will formally convey this in writing to them when we do our next batch of feedback on the community plan updates. That said, as a council office, it is certainly something that we are keeping an eye on. And there are neighborhoods that I have mentioned that I am worried about. Westchester is one of them. Right. Delray is one of them. Mar Vista is one of them. I think those at West LA always has been, and I think it will continue to be, but there's no lots left. They've literally there's no single family home neighborhoods hardly at all left in West LA. They're all gone. I don't know where builders are going to keep building. There's nowhere to go. But that means I think more and more of it is going to start focusing as we get projects on the west side. And remember, it's a handful that we have. And when you look at the distribution citywide, Trey put that map up. The vast, vast majority of these are in Central and South Los Angeles. And there's some reasons for that. The land is cheaper. Yeah. Developing and building on the west side of Los Angeles is already difficult. Westchester, I love you. I love you so much. You guys are my favorite part of our district. This is why I'm here. It's why our office is here. And you're a neighborhood that I want to fight for. I want to protect your community and the look and feel and character of it. But your land also happens to be some of the more affordable parcels that land on the market. And that is necessarily going to make them more attractive to developers. So we are keeping an eye on it. I think there is merit to your point that, one neighborhood, Westchester, shouldn't have to take the bulk or the brunt of it. I don't disagree with you. So we will convey that concept as part of our ongoing negotiations and strategies to try to implement this as fairly as we can. But to answer your question right now, no, there is not a current program in place that says, every neighborhood has to take one or another. These are controlled by private market conditions that are just not currently within my control. So like I said, we will keep working on that. I don't know ultimately how that will be received or what the outcome will be, but it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Well, and the irony is that the more builds like this we get, the lower our real estate will be worth. So it'll be even more attractive moving forward.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case or not. If you have a single family home in a nearby ER1 neighborhood, I don't know that project is going to have any impact. I can tell you the home values have continued to rise over the last decade, subject to the periodic swings that we have, regardless of the addition of density across the city. So I don't know if that's true or not, but something that we should absolutely be tracking and monitoring and keeping an eye on. So, I really lean heavily on our real estate community and subject matter experts to help us identify those trends. And if you don't already know Tracy Conyers, who asked a question a little while ago, she's a great contact. You should get to know her. She is a subject matter expert in this and can probably actually give you some real data that might be able to address that concern. But fair question and a good observation, Kate. So as we are wrapping up this evening, I know we have now gone almost a half an hour over our scheduled time. Thank you all for hanging in with me while we do this. I again want to be very, very clear about where I, as your council member and as your neighbor here in the West Side, land on these. I am supportive of good development that is respectful and responsible, that contributes to our community in beneficial ways. I am not in favor of reckless stack and pack density that impacts the community and the character of our neighborhoods. And I'm going to do everything that I can to use the limited tools that I have available to me to manage where these projects goes and to do everything in my power to concentrate them in our commercial zones and along our commercial corridors so that you can keep your single family home neighborhoods intact. But I also want to be very, very clear that ED1 is not homeless shelters. It's not inside safe motels. It's not interim beds. It's not permanent supportive housing. Affordable housing is capped rent so that people who have jobs making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year can compete at getting an apartment to live in somewhere too. And I do think that is really important. A lot of us have family members, have kids and young people who are starting out in life who are struggling to remain in Los Angeles. We don't have to be afraid of affordable housing just because it's affordable housing. I have my own issues when it comes to homeless housing and how that has been managed and how money has been wasted. That is a whole different issue and set of challenges than when we are talking about ED1 and density and affordable housing generally. So I just want folks to know there is a difference between those things. But my team and I are here always to hear your concerns, to be your advocate, to be your ally. We move every mountain that we can to achieve the outcomes and the results that we want to see. I don't want to see Westchester change much. I love Westchester. I love your neighborhoods. I love walking in your communities. And I am also well aware of unique challenges that you have living adjacent to our country's second largest airport. And those are things that are very unique to Westchester, that are not unique to Venice, that are not unique to Mar Vista or any other part of the city, which adds to why it is so frustrating that some bureaucrat in Sacramento is making the decision about what we have to build or we are required to let them build. And even on projects where I don't have a say, I don't have a vote, I don't have any legal tool available to me, we still go to bat for the community. And we try to work with the developers and we ask for those give backs. But there's other than asking, when these things are by right, that means they are by right. And so I really encourage all of us to stay educated, to track these bills that are coming out of Sacramento, and work with me and my team to channel your concerns and your energy around these issues into the places where you can help me move the needle on your behalf. So thank you all again for being with us this evening. I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you staying jumped in as long as many of you did on this call. And if you see narratives online or in these text threads that go around that don't sound right, that don't sound like something that Tracy Park, would say, I probably didn't say it. And so if you ever have a question or you're reading something about I'm pushing density in your neighborhood or shoving it into Westchester, please reach out because we are always, always happy to have conversations and try to educate people and look for ways to incorporate their feedback and give them pathways so that their voices can be heard in meaningful ways. So with that, we are going to say good night. We are running late now for another meeting that unfortunately I do have to get to, but we appreciate you all. Thank you, Team CD11, for staying on. And again, thank you to our colleagues from the planning department who made time to be with us this evening on hand to answer your questions. We love you, Westchester. We appreciate you being with us. And please feel free to reach out to me and my team if there is ever anything that we can do to try to help. We appreciate you. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.